I guess I wouldn't go on to my.
Tell me about. Please have a seat in my chair.
I wish we had a green screen so we could just put me sitting in the chair. Unique New York.
Unique New York.
Yo! Konnichiwa, and welcome to the No Nuance podcast. I'm your host, Matthew, and joined always by my lovely, beautiful co-host, Nick.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Matthew. Welcome to the No Nuance podcast, where we have compassionate conversations about contentious topics. How are you, Matthew?
Dude, I'm doing great.
Yeah?
Yeah. Just living life with the chillins and the wife. Living good. I was listening last night to radio while doing Uber Eats, and because we're trying to buy a house and we're working super hard and going ham on that.
Yeah, nice.
But
I didn't know you were doing Uber Eats.
Yeah, just supplementing the income. It's not a whole bunch, but we're like constantly working. Jessica's doing Redfin and I'm doing Uber Eats and my full-time job.
Nice.
And anyways, I was driving, listening to the radio. And have you heard the new Justin Bieber song?
Lonely or Holy?
Lonely.
Yeah.
That song is awesome.
You like it?
Yeah. At risk of
really
sounding
funny.
lame, it's super good. And I feel like it's super real. And
It's real for sure.
Like
I
feel for the guy.
Yeah, for sure. That's funny because I was actually thinking this wasn't. I don't like it. I like his song Holy a lot, and I find it funny that the two are probably on gonna be on the same album, or they are. I don't know. I don't really pay it full disclosure. I don't pay attention to pop music that much, so I'm not sure. But I say full disclosure on here a lot too. But I mean, I do like Bieber a lot, but I'm doing the ums and ahs a lot. It's
no
fine.
worries. It's all good.
I really like his song Holy. I don't know why I don't like the song Lonely. I think the only reason I don't like it is because I'm like, this just the fact that they're mass spreading this like really sad song to me is kind of funny. And it's like a sad song and a pop vibe. Yeah. It's weird. I think normally that would be right up my alley, but for some reason, something about it, I don't really like it. I think it's a well-written song. It's a fine song.
Yeah. I don't know, just like the feeling of it, and like I just felt for him.
Yeah,
it's so sad. Like I can imagine that getting rich at that young age, has like had a huge impact on his life and like the people in his life, and he probably doesn't have that many people who are like genuinely into him. They're just more like, oh, you're famous Justin Bieber. I guess I'm a believer now. So there we go. Yeah,
not to get too sidetracked here, but I've always said that about him, like, because people always criticized him for being weird or doing weird stuff. It would be really weird to be the most like wanted person in the world. Yeah, when you're 13 years old, like every girl in the world practically wanted Justin Bieber when he was 13 years old. Yeah, and, like he's kind of. That's been his life, and he had to like live this like secluded life and stuff because of that. Like that'd be such a weird experience. Like I would imagine that would cause somebody to grow up and be a little like socially awkward and maybe do weird stuff. I feel like it's a phenomenon. Same with like Macaulay Culkin or whatever. I can never say. I don't know how to say his name properly, but like
Culkin.
That's it. But
sounds right.
I always like second guess myself, like while I'm saying it. Anyways, he was so famous by the time he was like 6 years old. I mean, it's just weird. It's the same with Michael Jackson, like all these people. When you like step back and analyze some of their life decisions, and you think about it through that lens of like, they never really lived life as like a normal person. I would imagine you would do weird things if like your normal was being super famous and super rich and like yet living this secluded life. I bet to the outside world, the things you do would look pretty weird. Yeah.
People critique them so hard,
but they don't know them.
Yeah,
at all.
Exactly. And it's, I don't know, some with the money and the fame going to their head at such a young age, like
for sure.
That it kind of reminds me of Solomon from the Old Testament, just like how he had all of that stuff, and most of us strive for that kind of thing. Like, oh, I would love to have a bunch of money and a bunch of like recognition and stuff, but I mean, Solomon says it's all vanity. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't bring happiness. It doesn't bring anything. It just brings problems. Mo money, mo problem.
Yeah, totally.
But anyways,
yeah, actually, we should do a whole episode on the pop stars because I feel like I could go down a rabbit trail.
Yeah, it could be good. Anyways, how are you doing, man? What's going on with you?
Yeah, I'm good. Similar to you, I feel like I've just been working a lot. Krista and I do Uber Eats on the side sometimes too.
Wonderful.
Krista and I do Uber Eats together, and it makes it a lot easier in some ways because one person just drives, the other person runs and does the stuff. So, right now, because she's pregnant, I'm the person who does the running. But it's a pretty easy way to make extra money. And so
I average like $25 an hour. Yeah. And it's an awesome time for me just to like sit and think. Anyways, go back to what you were saying.
No, it is. It's a great way to make extra money, and it's pretty easy. And like you said, like, I don't know, we're kind of hit or miss. Some nights it's on and some nights it's pretty off. Some nights we can make like $100 and like it seems like within like a couple hours, and then some nights it's like we only make $10
for sure.
And then we just call it quits because we're like, it's not really working. Should we dive right into our topics for tonight then?
Heck yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So last week when we were talking, we had talked a little bit about basically the storming of the Capitol, people shot and killed. I think at the time when we did the podcast last week, we only had known about maybe 1 or 2 people that had died. Now we're up to 5, I believe, or more. There might be more people. And then we talked a little bit about impeachment, our articles of impeachment. But yeah, I think those are the main things we talked about, and we didn't really get much further than that. So I wanted to go back a little bit further or a little bit deeper into that because, I mean, it's a super interesting topic. It's happening as we speak. I think it has to deal with exactly the kind of stuff that we're interested in talking about, which is politics and religion and kind of the intersection between those two. And I feel like there's an interesting one that's happening. So I guess just starting off, I think we had talked about the impeachment proceedings. So articles of impeachment have been drawn. Actually, Congress has officially impeached Donald Trump. So the only thing at this point is whether the Senate's on like break on recess until January 19th.
Okay.
And so Congress themselves obviously can't impeach Donald Trump. They can't remove him from office. That's the Senate's job. But so the next kind of step in the process is that now that Congress has voted to convict him and impeach him, the next step is that Senate would get together and vote on it, but they're in recess till January 19th. What are your thoughts on the impeachment? Do you think that this is fair? Is this reasonable? And what is the likelihood that you think it'll actually happen?
Yeah. I don't know too much about what impeachment exactly entails.
Impeachment is a really confusing topic. I think most people don't understand it. I don't fully understand it. I understand a little bit more now. I think after a few times now, I feel like they've tried to impeach him. I've actually learned a lot more through his presidency about impeachment. Just wanted to say that. I think you're definitely not alone in that. I don't think a lot of people know a lot about impeachment. We can talk more about that, but go ahead.
Yeah. As far as the likelihood of it happening, I don't think it's very likely.
Right.
But
the thing is about that is that like some senators are saying they're technically on recess right now, but like I think Mitch McConnell, who is the majority chairman or majority leader of the Senate, said that he would vote to convict him and impeach him. Yeah, and he said he would come back from recess. He'd be willing to come back from recess, but supposedly there has to be a vote taken, and like all of the Senate has to agree that they come back from recess early. And so you're definitely going to have people who want to either just legitimately can't come back from recess, and then that would be an easy way to stonewall the process. Would be like, I'm just not going to come back if they didn't want him to be impeached, they could just say, I'm not willing to come back, or I don't want to come back. This isn't necessary.
So it is scary that he has so much like mental control over all these people that they'll follow him and believe whatever he says to the ends of the earth. Like, that's scary.
Yeah, I think he was right when he said like forever ago that he could like walk down on Fifth Ave in New York City and shoot somebody dead, and they would still, like, the Republicans would, or like his supporters would still follow him. And I'm like,
he actually said that?
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure he.
Oh my gosh.
We have to fact check that one, but I'm pretty sure he said that he could like shoot somebody and they would still support him. And I'm like, I kind of think he's right. Like, I think there's a lot of people, and there was like the Jordan Klepper interviews. I don't know if you've seen those. He intentionally goes to like Trump rallies and tries to make, like, it's very satirical. He asks them questions to try and make them look stupid, and he's being sarcastic. But he basically just pointed out, and I mean, I don't want to just say, like, to a certain extent, anybody who's going to go to any sort of political like rally is pretty, like, I don't think there's a lot of critical thinking happening there. So Klepper was just asking them like, what if he did this? What if he did this? And he said like awful things. And he's like, would you still vote for him? And they were like, yeah, like, and it's just crazy. Yikes. Yeah. Some people have an undying, like, loyalty to him, and that's obviously very concerning. But bigger part of the push from a lot of the Democrats is that, like, they want to set a precedent, like this sure.
A precedent for the president.
Exactly. Like, we want, like, this is just, obviously horrible,
ridiculous
behavior for anybody, especially the president. And so they want to set that precedent and say, like, no, you can't get away with this. Also, impeaching him would mean that he's barred from being president again, from serving again, at least for the 2024 election. And it might be longer than that. No. And there's like people have talked about, even if we don't impeach him, we should try and there was talk of things that you could do to make it so he can't run again in 2024. And one thing that I wanted to point out, so you had said you don't know a lot about impeachment, and I honestly don't either. Impeachment is a political process. It's not it's not a legal proceeding at all. It's not punitive. So he's not actually being like, it's not saying that he broke the law. It's just a matter of whether people think that he's fit to serve or not. And that's the biggest thing in question. So I think a lot of people get confused by that.
Gotcha. Yeah. Didn't know that.
So, and that's one of the caveats I think a lot of people who are defending him at this point, saying he didn't actually incite violence. He didn't actually incite the rioters and the breach of the Capitol. That's one of the defenses that they're using, is that when it comes to like inciting something from a legal standpoint, it's really hard to draw the connection to say like this person caused this person to do this thing because of things like freedom of speech and stuff. Like, I can basically say, Matt, go do this. And I think I probably actually have a good chance of like getting away with it. You'd have to prove that I coerced you in some way or something like that. Going on right now is like, what President Trump said, is it protected under free speech? Is it not? And the reality is like, since it's not, impeachment isn't a legal proceeding, we don't need to determine that in order to impeach him. Yeah. But I guess I'm kind of curious. Do you think that the things that he said on Twitter or anywhere else, does that lead you to believe that he actually incited the violence? Or
can you like summarize what he said? I don't follow politics very well. Or
on Twitter, he said that like a week or so before the riots, he had told people to be at the Capitol for protesting of some sort. And then the day of or the day before, he held a rally where he talked about, I mean, he said a lot of stuff in that, but he said to like peacefully protest. I guess I'm not really doing it justice, but I guess more so what I'm wondering is, what do you think about like the censorship of him? Do you think is that justified or is that not? Because he got permanently banned from Twitter. I think we talked about that last week. And I guess to me that makes sense, but I think that I'm really curious about, and I'll be honest and say I haven't done a ton of research on this one, but like a lot of other conservative thinkers who either support their president or like are in line with his thinking also got like banned from Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that. Mm. And I guess there's a lot of people who are genuinely concerned about that, both like Trump supporters and non-Trump supporters. Because that's like it seems like a violation of freedom of speech, or it's not because they're privately owned companies, but there just is a concern of like,
that was something I was going to bring up, their privatization of it.
It's interesting. And I don't know, I guess I'm wondering kind of what your thoughts are on that.
I think it's scary that these privatized companies that maybe shouldn't be privatized because they are so public that they control what can be seen and what is seen. I think that maybe it was, if he was in fact inciting violence, yes, ban him. But that also becomes scary because it seems like most of these companies are very progressive and liberal focused companies. And so if they were to just start like banning people just because of their political views, that can get scary, and that seems like leading to dictatorship and like only one view. You can only have this view. We're only going to show you this view. You're only going to get like education from other people through this view. And that scares me. Ultimately, it's their say because it's their company and they can do whatever they want. But it is scary. I don't necessarily think that they should be privatized, which is, I don't even know how that would work on privatizing those companies. But I guess those are my thoughts. I haven't thought too much about them, but those are what I have as of now.
I mean, I understand why they banned Trump because of his his continual just bullshit, but and also the fact that, I don't know, I guess just because he is so powerful. I mean, the president, it's so weird. It's always been so weird to me that he chose Twitter as his main platform. Like, I don't know that there's ever been any president that's ever done something like that, but I think that's partially because he doesn't trust in any of the news outlets. And so
I mean, it's a good way to get your views out, what you want to say, get it out to the public.
So I guess that kind of brings me to the final thing that I wanted to talk about, which is social media, particularly Facebook. I think something that I've been seeing a lot. I think ever since social media has gotten so big, it becomes easier to, I mean, there's a lot of things that come with it. There's a lot more, I think, tribalistic thinking.
Can you dive more into tribalistic thinking? You've said it many times, and I just want to understand what you're meaning by that.
Bum 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 bum.
Thanks for bringing that up. To me, the term, I think it's like this kind of a polarizing viewpoint where it's like everybody who agrees with me, we're all in complete agreement about everything, and people who disagree are, there's this like inside in group and out grouping where it's like people who think like me, they're cool, they're safe, they're my people on the outside are the enemy, and we should be fearful of them, we should attack them any chance we have. And I think for whatever reason, I think partially, I know on Twitter, it's, people have pointed out that just with the fact that you have like a character limit on how much you can say, so you can't actually like articulate nuanced points and stuff like that in Twitter, you're actually forced to like dumb down what you say. I know for some people that's been one of the critiques of it, is that it forces you to say like dumber things. And when you're really like heated and emotional, I think the last thing that you probably want to do is say less words. Like the idea would be to say more so you can kind of talk it out and like nuance your viewpoint, and then people can either agree with that or not, but at least they can like fully understand you. But with such like a limit on what you can say, you're forced to dumb it down, and then and when you're putting a bunch of like anger in there or whatever emotion you have, then it just comes across as like, it's like, how can you blame the other side in as few words as possible, or how can you say that you're angry in as few words as possible? And I think that inherently makes you seem more vulgar. And then the response is the same way, and they're like, oh wow, you really think that? Like, instead of like working out like I said, like all the little like specific nuances to your viewpoint, they inherently get this like rough outline that looks really bad. And so I think that there's that problem with the in-grouping and out-grouping. So I guess that's kind of what I'm thinking of.
Okay.
And I think you see that a lot on like Facebook, because you'll see like memes, and it's like it always just blames the other side, whatever that is for you, makes them just like makes fun of them entirely, and just like they're so stupid, they're so simple-minded. And something about that, and then the anonymity of not being able to actually see another person's face when you're engaging online, I think also brings out a lot of tribalism, because you're just thinking about viewpoints, and you're imagining a person, and you're imagining a worldview that's like worse than the actual person. And when you're face to face with another person, I think you're forced to kind of like, I mean, for one, I think empathy naturally comes in a little bit, which is an interesting thing, psychologically speaking, but that we could like go further into, but maybe another time. But also, I think you begin to see like their specific views on specific things, and you usually rationalize a little better. And so I think social media just really exacerbates that kind of tribalism, where it's like you're either with me or you're completely misguided, and you need to be corrected or taken out or whatever.
Yeah, the only social media experience I have right now is Reddit. I recently started following some like political groups, just like subreddits. You read the article and then you see everybody's comments on it, and it's everybody constantly bashing the other side depending on what the article is saying. Usually it's like liberal stuff. I haven't seen many conservative viewpoints on there. But they're like so angry about this stuff, which maybe they're justified in that. They're going about changing people's minds in the wrong way. Like it's the way they're going about it is just it's gonna make them dig their heels into their views even more.
Right.
They will become just as arrogant with their views as the person who is posting this stuff. It's so like sad to see all of it, see all the hatred and blaming and profanity used. They argue so much, and I feel like if we were to just get together and like actually talk it through in a calm, understanding way, people's minds would be changed more.
Totally.
Before we started like talking more politics, you and me, I was like a lot more conservative. Now I'm like, I don't even know where I'm at. I'm somewhere in limbo of political views.
I actually feel similarly.
Yeah, I don't think it's so black and white as people on social media make it seem.
It's not. It's very colorful.
It's very colorful. Rainbow, some would say.
Yeah.
Also, it's so hard to decipher the people's infliction in just reading it online.
Yeah, you don't know if they're being sarcastic or if they're like serious, or
if they're angry or if they're purposely being an ass, or if they're just like trying to have a conversation. It can be read so many different ways, and I think social media is the wrong place to talk about politics.
Definitely.
I mean, it is a way to get it out there, especially if you're frustrated with the current political climate. I don't know. It doesn't come across well. It's so disheartening, I guess. I don't have any other way to put it. But.
Well, I want to go back to something that you just said, in that you said maybe that the people are justified in their anger right now. I guess what I'm wondering is, I think a common rebuttal in defense of, I mean, I don't think they're defending the breaching of the Capitol, but it's kind of like there's people who support Donald Trump, or maybe more conservative leaning people, that are kind of like, look, we're really upset about the breaching of the Capitol, but I don't think it's fair for so many people to be so outraged about it when we literally had a summer full of peaceful protests where there was like rioting and looting all across the country. And there was destruction of federal buildings and police cars set on fire. And so I think a rebuttal from more right-leaning folks, or maybe just some people in general, is like, look, what happened at the Capitol is awful, but I don't think it's fair that you're so outraged by this. Like media outlets are, they're focusing on this and they're so appalled, but all this rioting was going on in the summer and nobody seemed to like say, like media outlets were kind of like, this is fine. And I guess
so that brings into the conversation of if people are justified in what they're protesting about.
Yeah. So is there a difference in the way that you respond to a protest based on what they're protesting, or is it just all protesting is wrong, or is it just protesting that's violent, that ends up being violent is wrong? I think that's an interesting topic, because I think for a lot of people on social media platforms, it seems like it's an eye for an eye in their mind. They're like, look, you should be outraged by this, but you should also have been outraged by the things that happened over the summer. And I guess in my mind, I'm like, are we naturally just equating the two outrages though? Like Black Lives Matter and the storming of the Capitol, those are inherently equal because of the outcomes. And so the question kind of becomes, is there sort of a hierarchy of just causes, or are all just causes kind of looked at through the lens of the destruction that they might do?
And who decides these hierarchies as well?
Yeah.
If there is a hierarchy, which I think there is more important protests. First of all, protests where people are getting hurt or destruction of property is happening is not a way to protest at all. That is dangerous and it's not going to help anything.
You're right. And I just want to give one caveat. I agree with you, but I think that some people would say with like the Black Lives Matter protest that broke out over the summer was like, look, Black people have peacefully protested too. Like when they kneeled during the national anthem in the NFL and nobody listened, nobody cared. It was like,
people listened and people cared.
But it didn't, nothing changed. Yeah. So nothing changed. And so I think some people's rebuttal is like, it had to come to more drastic measures because people like weren't listening. And when it did get to drastic measures, it seems like people started listening because all of a sudden you started seeing Black Lives Matter signs in everybody's yard, or at least like that's what I saw. I live in Seattle, so maybe it's different. But yeah, it seemed like people were finally listening. So I agree with you, but I guess that I just want to put that in there and just say that like that is probably a rebuttal you might hear from people.
That's a good point, but yeah, I guess my morals would say destruction of property, hurting people is wrong.
Right.
But they have a claim where they've been hurt, which is a legitimate thing. Oh man, this is
it's really
a very
tricky,
hard topic.
And I think that that's the difficulty in a way. That's like if we call out one thing and not the other, or vice versa. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of things. I just think it's interesting. We automatically kind of equate the two and say that like, there's no way that one is more justified than the other. I guess I would say that I don't agree with the ends, but I guess like the means, I guess I don't agree with the way that they went about protesting, but to me, I don't know. I guess my proclivity is to say that like the Black Lives Matter protests that happened during this summer feel more like a just cause than people sacking the Capitol because
they think their president lost.
It like seems like they didn't get their way. I get that their complaint is not that. Their complaint is that the election was stolen and democracy is being taken from our hands. And in that sense, I understand the frustration, but it's just like, it's just interesting that the two are automatically equated and nobody thinks it seems like nobody's doing the hard work of saying, like, is one maybe more of a just cause than the other, or is it just no matter what?
I guess that would be in the eye of the beholder. Like,
yeah.
It's whoever has the view thinks that they're justified.
So I guess my final question is, like, then, so let's put this through our context, through our lens. I guess I'll give a little plug here. A podcast that I've been listening to that I really enjoy, and I recommended it to you, but I don't know if you ever listened. It's called the 10-Minute Bible Talks, and it's like their thing is something about the Bible, learn about the Bible in the time it takes you to get to work or something. Anyways, but they talk about how, like, justice is actually, like, so they talk about current issues, and like justice is a really popular topic in our culture today, particularly social justice. And they bring that back to the Bible, and they're like, social justice was actually really important to the early church as well. And here's how you can tell. And you look at the epistles and whatnot.
Sure.
And so I guess my question is, as Christians, do we believe that there are more just causes than others? Do we have a biblical framework with which to look at the world and say, like, you know, maybe God cares more about these kinds of things versus these kinds of things? Or are we kind of still chasing back to square one and just deciding, you know, I don't know. I guess that's my question. Is there a difference? Does our worldview say that some actions or some just causes are more just than others, or no?
I would think so.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't thought about this hardly at all, except that you just brought it up. But I think that if somebody or a group of people is being harmed, God would care more about that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think that God would care about a political system or who is the president of the United States. I don't think that's really, oh, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. What do you think, man?
Yeah, it's a really tricky question. I realize
that's hard.
I put a hard one to you. I think one of the reasons I asked you that, though, and I want to open it up to our viewership. So anybody, if you have thoughts, comments,
for sure,
put them in the comment section. What you think about this question? Yeah, I guess I kind of agree with you. I think that, although I think a fair rebuttal would be that, like, people can get harmed when certain political systems get thrown out the window, right? Like, if we throw democracy out of the window, then we have a lot of people that are potentially going to get hurt. And we've seen this throughout history, you know, with socialism and communism and different kinds of government that, like, there's obviously can be serious problems with that. So people would potentially get hurt. And so in that sense, I understand why someone would say, like, no, we need to defend our democracy. And so this is why we're outraged. And this is really important. But yeah, I have a hard time. I think I've always had a heart for the movement behind Black Lives Matter, for racial inequality and racial justice has always been an important topic and issue for me. And so it's hard for me to say that they're equal. Yeah, and I guess one just seems so much more clear, like the way that African Americans have been treated in this country since they were brought here on slave boats is a very, I think, a clear indication of our brokenness as humans, and the brokenness of our systems and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas it's a lot less clear with, like, whether the election was stolen and whether democracy is being wiped away. I also think it's interesting, and this was talked about in the 10-Minute Bible Talks, was one of the first issues that was actually ever talked about in Paul's letters was the issue of race. And that was something that was really interesting about that 10-Minute Bible Talk was, like, I think we have a tendency to think that race wasn't like an issue back in the early church like it is today, like, because they were all, like, you know, Middle Eastern people, or what is it? I can't think of, they're Asian people essentially. that it wasn't an issue, but it's funny because that's actually one of the first things that Paul talked about was the Jews and Gentiles, which at the time that was like one of the biggest, like most divisive things in their society. And then that's why they had all these conversations about circumcision and things like this. And it was really, and there was like this whole question about should we allow Gentiles to be in a worship service with us, or should we put them, do it in some other way? And are we allowed to go to their house? Are they allowed to come to our house? Like it was actually a big issue. And so that's why I think the Bible was groundbreaking in that way, or Paul's letters to the early church, where at least in that he hit it head on and was like, you are now neither Jew nor Gentile. I think my point would be that there are some issues that I think are more important than others from a Christian worldview, but I'm curious as to what others think. So again, I want to say open that question up to the viewership. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. Thank you, Matt. This has been a great conversation that we've had, and it's been a real pleasure as always. And to anybody who watched, we will see you next week. Be sure, if you like the content, to hit that like button and subscribe. Hit the little bell notification so you'll be notified when we post new videos. And do you have any closing thoughts, Matthew?
Yeah. If you didn't like this podcast or the content that was provided, please comment on why and what your disagreement was. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. See you next time.
See you next time.